And the reason why is because they want to nationalize the banking system. Nationalize, just like they have with health care. If you didn't know it, you live in a corporatist, fascist society. The same thing dreamt up by Benito Mussolini and copied by Adolf Hitler. And that, dear Americans, is what you've got. And that's where it's going.
And Bob, we talked about this issue of nationalizing the banks through the progressive failure of the banks by under the FDIC, and the notion that they were closing them only a few banks at a time, when quite frankly, you talk about 1,000 to 2,000 banks going under, they're technically already bankrupt. If the FDIC had the wherewithal and the politicians had the guts to come out and say what they were doing, they'd theoretically be able to close them all technically this week. What's fascinating to me, Bob, I've been reading some reports about the state of assets versus the state of deposits that were on the books of these banks, and then the FDIC goes in and discovers just how much the assets were marked to fantasy. And when they're marked to reality, or marked to market as it is during the process of the closure, the FDIC finds out that it's on the hook for a whole lot more money than it thought that it would have been if you had taken the bank's accounting numbers at face value. Well, we're seeing this everywhere in our entire financial system, aren't we, Bob? We're seeing it in valuations of pension fund assets. We're seeing it in valuations even of financial assets, the mortgage-backed securities. We're certainly seeing it in the big banks, who are so bankrupt that the notion that they go up on Wall Street just astounds me. You'll get a kick out of this, Bob. I was watching at CNBC in a little window on my screen here while I'm watching this, and Larry Kudlow is on, and the little marquee at the bottom of the screen is, "Why is no one paying income taxes?" And I just laughed, and I said, well, probably because they have a whole bunch of losses to report this year. But nevertheless, he's up there being the talking head that he is. And I'm just saying to myself, you listen to them talk about how great the banking system is. Yeah, no wonder the Fed injects all of this money. It doesn't turn into inflation because it ends up in the banks that are trying to shore up their assets and their balance sheets and they can't even do it as quickly as the holes in the dike are bleeding the valuations from the loss of their commercial loans, their residential loans, all of their financial holdings and their financial assets. It would be comically funny if at the end of it we weren't led to absolute ruin. This is insane.
Well, what the public doesn't know as well is that there are over 500 banks that the comptroller of the currency have people inside those banks running them. And they're not going to tell you that. It's just like all the information I've just given you. The basis to that information, as far as the U.S. officially devaluing with others, and the debt default, and the information on the FDIC probably running out of money by the end of the year, and the U.S. government not continuing to fund them. That all came from a friend, a contact, who attends Fed meetings.
Right,
and
you've been talking about this for a couple of months now.
This is straight skinny.
Yeah, you've been talking about this for a couple of months now, and we heard it. I like to say we heard it here first from Bob Chapman that the FDIC was potentially going to disappear by the end of the year, and it certainly makes sense because why on earth would the U.S. government want to bail out the depositors through the FDIC by giving them a whole bunch of money when their intent is to nationalize? If they want to bring all of the citizens to their knees by evaporating all of their assets, can you think of a better way to do it? I find it almost comical, but not unexpected, that yes, there would be folks from the government in these banks just kind of keeping an eye on them and probably making the determination as to just how bad they're doing and what's appropriate to close.
Another thing I was told, this was just yesterday. We published the Forecaster today. And just yesterday I was also told that, oh God, I forgot it. Let me think for a minute here.
You were talking about your banker friend from the Fed who was giving you a report about something else, and I don't remember offhand what it was.
They told me about the banking legislation, and the comment was, the draft that I have seen, this fellow told me, is terrifying.
Oh, that's right.
And what they're going to do is pull the same crap that they pulled with the medical thing and pass this thing to allow for the nationalization of banks.
So much for private enterprise, so much for capitalism, so much for a constitutional republic. We're under attack from so many fronts that my own feeling is that the revolution's going to come way too late. They always start late, and there's this huge mess to clean up. So there's nothing different we're going to see about it this time.
But anyway, that's the immediate outlook. The United States government continues each day to manipulate the stock market, the commodity markets, and of course the currency market in the case of the dollar. And they've been pouncing all over gold and silver again for two reasons. Number one, they don't want it going up and interfering with the dollar getting stronger. And second of all, tomorrow is option expiration for gold options. And the lower they can get the price, the more options end up out of the money and they don't have to pay off. Every month they do it. This is the U.S. government doing this. Every month they do it, and they screw the American investor out of billions of dollars every single month.
Bob, there's been conversation about, and there's been talk about the actual physical market decoupling somewhat from the futures and the paper market for gold. How, in your eyes, is that progressing? And at what point do you think that there's a split-off point where they actually lose control of it because of the failure of the paper derivatives as it relates to precious metals to truly be representative of what's out there? No, we've been moving in that direction for a while, but what's the progress there?
Well, it's hard to say. We don't know. It will happen. I can't give it any timing. I don't know what the event will be. More and more foreigners are going to physical. They're going into the LBMA in London and taking delivery. They're going into the London fixes and taking delivery. And some of them are taking delivery on the COMEX, but not as many. And there will be a physical shortage of gold, there's no question, and silver too. It's only a matter of time. I don't believe the ETF, GLD, and SLV have the gold that they say they have. I think they're using derivatives, and I think they're lying about it. I think they've lent gold and silver to the United States government to cover their short positions. And I think that there'll be a major scandal somewhere down along the line with GLD and SLV, which are exchange-traded funds. And I also believe there'll be major scandals on the LBMA as well as COMEX. And that will bring the futures and derivative markets to a halt. And then it will be only physical and the shares. Anybody who has gold certificates with any kind of a company, get rid of them and take delivery. Gold and silver stock should be fine. They'll perform very well. Numismatic coins will come into their own, but they have to be mint state and graded, and they will do very well. And of course, gold and silver bullion will go up. And the government is well aware that gold is headed up to 7,000, 7,500, and every time they knock this thing down, they buy more and more physical for themselves. And they've been doing it ever since gold was $2.50 an ounce. And you know, when they had the big sales back in the early 90s, the biggest buyer were the Rothschilds.
Yep.
And they said they were buying for clients. I got news for you, they were buying for themselves. And it wasn't long after that, a couple of years later,